Hello, and welcome to Bookspot. I'm Earl Weinberg. This time we will continue our reading of Citizen of the Galaxy by Robert Heinlein. Our hero Thorby is now a young member of the Hegemony Space Patrol and is frequently interviewed by the captain because of his knowledge of the legendary colonel that raised Thorby under the guise of being a beggar. Thorby reported regularly to the cabin, sometimes to see Brisby and sometimes to be interviewed under hypnosis by Dr. Krishnamurti. Brisby always mentioned the search for Thorby's identity and told him not to be discouraged. Such a search took a long time. Repeated mention changed Thorby's attitude about it from something impossible to something which was going to be true soon. He began thinking about his family, wondering who he was. It was going to be nice to know, to be like other people. Brisby was reassuring himself. He had been notified to keep Thorby off sensitive work the very day the ship jumped from Hecate, when he had hoped that Thorby would be identified at once. He kept the news to himself, holding fast to his conviction that Colonel Baslam was never wrong and that the matter would be cleared up. When Thorby was shifted to combat control, Brisby worried when the order passed across his desk. That was a security area, never open to visitors. Then he told himself that a man with no special training couldn't learn anything there that could really affect security, and that he was already using the lad in a much more sensitive line of work. Brisby felt that he was learning things of importance, that the old man, for example, had used the cover personality of a one-legged beggar to hide two-legged activities, but had actually been a beggar. He and the boy had lived only on alms. Brisby admired such artistic perfection. It should be an example to other agents. But the old man had always been a shining example. So Brisby left Thorby in combat control. He omitted to make permanent Thorby's acting promotion in order that the record of change in rating need not be forwarded to BU personnel. But he became anxious to receive the dispatch that would tell him who Thorby was. His executive was with him when it came in. It was in code, but Brisby recognized Thorby's serial number. He had written it many times in reports to X-Corps. "Look at this, Stinky. This tells us who our foundling is. Grab the machine. The safe is open." 10 minutes later, they had it processed. It read, "Null result, full identi-search, Baslam, Thorby, GDS, MN, 3rd, often GRT transfer, any receiving station retransfer, Hecate investigation disposition, chief view per." "Stinky, ain't that a mess?" Stanky shrugged. "It's how the dice roll, boss. Feel as if I'd let the old man down. He was sure the kid was a citizen. I missed out. There are millions of citizens who would have a bad time proving who they are. Colonel Baslam may have been right, and still it can't be proved. I hate to transfer him. I feel responsible. Not your fault. You never served under Colonel Baslam. He was easy to please. All he wanted was 100% perfection, and this doesn't feel like it. Quit blaming yourself. You have to accept the record. Might as well get it over with. Eddie, I want to see Ordnanceman Baslam." Thorby noticed that the skipper looked grim, but then he often did. "Acting Ordnanceman 3rd Class Baslam reporting, sir." "Thorby?" "Yes, sir?" Thorby was startled. The skipper sometimes used his first name because that was what he answered to under hypnosis, but this was not such a time. "The identification report on you came." "Huh?" Thorby was startled out of military manners. He felt a surge of joy. He was going to know who he was. "They can't identify you." Brisby waited, then said sharply, "Did you understand?" Thorby swallowed. "Yes, sir. They don't know who I am. I'm not anybody." "Nonsense. You're still yourself." "Yes, sir. Is that all, sir? May I go?" "Just a moment. I have to transfer you back to Hecate." He added hastily, seeing Thorby's expression, "Don't worry, they'll probably let you serve out your enlistment if you want to. In any case, they can't do anything to you. You haven't done anything wrong. Yes, sir, Thorby repeated dully. Nothing and nobody. He had a blinding image of an old nightmare, standing on the block, hearing an auctioneer chant his description while cold eyes stared at him. But he pulled himself together and was merely quiet the rest of the day. It was not until the compartment was dark that he bit his pillow and whispered brokenly, "Pop, oh, Pop." The guard uniform covered Thorby's legs, but in the showers, the tattoo on his left thigh could be noticed. When this happened, Thorby explained without embarrassment what it signified. Responses varied from curiosity through half disbelief to awed surprise that here was a man who had been through it, capture, sale, servitude, and miraculously free again. Most civilians did not realize that slavery still existed. Guardsmen knew better. No one was nasty about it. But the day after the null report on identification, Thorby encountered Decibel Peavy in the showers. Thorby did not speak. They had not spoken much since Thorby had moved out from under Peavy, even though they sat at the same table. But now Peavy spoke. "Hi, traitor." "Hi," Thorby began to bathe. "What's that on your leg? Dirt?" "Where?" "On your thigh. Hold still. Let's see. Keep your hands to yourself. Don't be touchy. Turn around to the light. What is it?" "It's a slaver's mark," Thorby explained curtly. "No fooling. So you're a slave?" "Used to be." "They put chains on you? Make you kiss your master's foot?" "Don't be silly." "Look who's talking. You know what, traitor boy? I heard about that mark, and I think you had it tattooed yourself to make big talk, like that one about how you blasted a bandit ship." Thorby cut his shower short and got out. At dinner, Thorby was helping himself from a bowl of mashed potatoes. He heard Peavy call out something, but his ears filtered out Decibel's endless noise. Peavy repeated it. "Hey, slave, pass the potatoes. You know who I mean. Dig the dirt out of your ears." Thorby passed him the potatoes, bowl and all, in a flat trajectory, open face of the bowl plus potatoes, making perfect contact with the open face of Decibel. The charge against Thorby was assaulting a superior officer, the ship then being in space in a condition of combat readiness. Peavy appeared as complaining witness. Colonel Brisby stared over the mast desk and his jaw muscles worked. He listened to Peavy's account. "I asked him to pass the potatoes and he hit me in the face with them." "That was all?" "Well, sir, maybe I didn't say please, but that's no reason." "Never mind the conclusions. Did the fight go any further?" "No, sir, they separated us." "Very well. Baslam, what have you to say for yourself?" "Nothing, sir." "Is that what happened?" "Yes, sir." Brisby stopped to think while his jaw muscles twitched. He felt angry, an emotion he did not permit himself at mast. He felt let down. Still, there must be more to it. Instead of passing sentence, he said, "Step aside, Colonel Stanky." "Yes, sir." "There were other men present. I want to hear from them." "I have them standing by, sir." "Very well." Thorby was convicted, 3 days bread and water, solitary, sentence suspended, 30 days probation, acting rank stricken. Decibel was convicted, court trial waived when Brisby pointed out how the book could be thrown at him, of inciting to riot, specification using derogatory language with reference to another guardsman's race, religion, birthplace, or condition previous to entering service, the ship then being, etc. Sentence 3 days, bread and water, solitary, suspended, reduction 1 grade, 90 days probation, in reference B and W solitary only. The colonel and vice colonel went back to Brisby's office. Brisby was looking glum. Mast upset him at best. Stanky said, Too bad you had to clip the Baslam kid. I think he was justified. Of course he was justified, but inciting to riot is no excuse for riot. Nothing is. Sure, you had to, but I don't like that PB character. I'm going to make careful study of his efficiency marks. Do that. But confound it, Stinky, I have a feeling I started the fight myself. Huh? 2 days ago, I had to tell Baslam that we hadn't been able to identify him. He walked out in a state of shock. I should have listened to my psych officer. The lad has scars that make him irresponsible under the wrong stimulus. I'm glad it was mashed potatoes and not a knife. Oh, come now, boss. Mashed potatoes are hardly a deadly weapon. You weren't here when he got the bad news. Not knowing who he is hurts him. Stanky's pudgy face pouted in thought. Boss, how old was this kid when he was captured? Eh? Chris thinks he was about 4. Skipper, that backwoods place where you were born, at what age were you fingerprinted, blood-typed, retina-photoed, and so forth? Why, when I started school. Me too. I bet they wait that long most places. Brisby blinked. That's why they wouldn't have anything on him. Maybe. But on Riff, they take identity on a baby before he leaves the delivery room. My people too, but sure, it's common practice. But how? Brisby looked blank, then banged the desk. Footprints! And we didn't send them in! He slapped the talkie. Eddie, get Baslam here on the double. Thorby was glumly removing the chevron he had worn by courtesy for so short a time. He was scared by the peremptory order. It boded ill. But he hurried. Colonel Brisby glared at him. Baslam, take off your shoes. Sir? Take off your shoes! Brisby's dispatch questioning failure to identify and supplying Bew purse with footprints was answered in 48 hours. It reached the Hydra as she made her final approach to Ultima Thule. Colonel Brisby decoded it when the ship had been secured dirtside. It read, Guardsman Thorby Baslam identified missing person Thor Bradley Rubeck, Terra, not Hecate. Transfer Rubeck fastest. Mylercom Terra, discharge arrival, next kin notified. Repeat, fastest. Chief Bew purse. Brisby was chuckling. Baslam is never wrong, dead or alive. He's never wrong. Boss? Huh? Read it again. Notice who he is. Brisby reread the dispatch, and he said in a hushed voice, Why do things like this always happen to Hydra? He strode over and snatched the door. Eddie! Thorby was on beautiful Ultima Thule for 2 hours and 27 minutes. What he saw of the famous scenery after coming 300 light years was the field between the Hydra and the guard mail courier Ariel. 3 weeks later, he was on Terra. He felt dizzy. Chapter 17. Lovely Terra, mother of worlds. What poet, whether or not he has been privileged to visit her, has not tried to express the homesick longing of men for mankind's birthplace, her cool green hills, cloud-graced skies, restless oceans, her warm maternal charm? Thorby's first sight of legendary Earth was by view screen of GMC Ariel. Guard Captain Ngangi, skipper of the mail ship, stepped up the gain and pointed out the arrow-sharp shadows of the Egyptian pyramids. Thorby didn't realize the historical significance and was looking in the wrong place. But he enjoyed seeing a planet from space. He had never been thus privileged before. Thorby had a dull time in the Ariel. The mail ship, all legs and tiny payload, carried a crew of 3 engineers and 3 astrogators, all of whom were usually on watch or asleep. He started off badly because Captain Ngangi had been annoyed by a hold for passenger dispatch from the Hydra. Mail ships don't like to hold. The mail must go through. But Thorby behaved himself, served the pre-cooked meals, and spent his time plowing through the library, a drawer under the skipper's bunk. By the time they approached Saul, the commanding officer was over his peak, to have the feeling brought back by orders to land at Galactic Enterprises Field instead of Guard Base. But Ngangi shook hands as he gave Thorby his discharge and the paymaster's draft. Instead of scrambling down a rope ladder, mail couriers have no hoists, Thorby found that a lift came up to get him. It leveled off opposite the hatch and offered easy exit. A man in spaceport uniform of Galactic Enterprise met him. "Mr. Rudbeck?" "That's me, I guess." "This way, Mr. Rudbeck, if you please." The elevator took them below ground and into a beautiful lounge. Thorby, mussed and none too clean from weeks in a crowded steel box, was uneasy. He looked around. 8 or 10 people were there, 2 of whom were a gray-haired, self-assured man and a young woman. Each was dressed in more than a year's pay for a guardsman. Thorby did not realize this in the case of the man, but his trader's eye spotted it in the female. It took money to look that demurely provocative. In his opinion, the effect was damaged by her high-fashion hairdo, a rising structure of green blending into gold. He blinked at the cut of her clothes. He had seen fine ladies in Jubalpur, where the climate favored clothing only for decoration, but the choice of skin display seemed different here. Thorby realized uneasily that he was again going to have to get used to new customs. The important-looking man met him as he got out of the lift. "Thor, welcome home, lad." He grabbed Thorby's hand. "I'm John Weemsby. Many is the time I've bounced you on my knee. Call me Uncle Jack, and this is your cousin Lita." The girl with the green hair placed hands on Thorby's shoulder and kissed him. He did not return it. He was much too startled. She said, "It's wonderful to have you home, Thor." Thanks." "And now you must greet your grandparents," Weemsby announced, "Professor Bradley and your grandmother Bradley." Bradley was older than Weemsby, slight and erect, a paunch, neatly trimmed beard. He was dressed like Weemsby in daytime formal jacket, padded tights, and short cape, but not as richly. The woman had a sweet face and alert blue eyes. Her clothing did not resemble that of Lita, but seemed to suit her. She pecked Thorby on the cheek and said gently, "It's like having my son come home." The elderly man shook hands vigorously. "It's a miracle, son. You look just like our boy, your father. Doesn't he, dear?" "He does." There was chit-chat, which Thorby answered as well as he could. He was confused and terribly self-conscious. It was more embarrassing to meet these strangers who claimed him as their blood than it had been to be adopted into Sisu. These old people, they were his grandparents? Thorby couldn't believe it, even though he supposed they were. To his relief, the man, Weemsby, who claimed to be his Uncle Jack, said with polite authority, "We had better go. I'll bet this boy is tired, so I'll take him home, eh?" The Bradleys murmured agreement. The party moved toward the exit. Others in the room, all men, none of whom had been introduced, went with them. In the corridor, they stepped onto a glideway which picked up speed until walls were whizzing past. It slowed as they neared the end, miles away, Thorby judged, and was stationary for them to step off. This place was public. The ceiling was high and the walls lost in crowds. Thorby recognized the flavor of a transport station. The silent men with them moved into blocking positions, and their party proceeded in a direct line regardless of others. Several persons tried to break through, and one man managed it. He shoved a microphone at Thorby and said rapidly, "Mr. Rudbeck, what is your opinion of the—" The guard grabbed him. Weemsby said quickly, Later, call my office. You'll get the story." Lenses were trained on them, but from high up and far away. They moved into another passageway. A gate closed behind them. Its glideway deposited them at an elevator which took them to a small enclosed airport. A craft was waiting, and beyond it a smaller one, both sleek, smooth, flattened ellipsoids. Weemsby stopped. "You'll be all right?" he asked Mrs. Bradley. "Oh, surely," answered Professor Bradley. The car was satisfactory. "Excellent, a nice hop, and I'm sure a good one back." "Then we'll say goodbye. I'll call you when he's had a chance to get oriented. You understand?" "Oh, surely. We'll be waiting." Thorby got a peck from his grandmother, a clap on the shoulder from his grandfather. Then he embarked with Weemsby and Lita in the larger car. Its skipper saluted. Mr. Weemsby then saluted Thorby. Thorby managed to return it. Mr. Weemsby paused in the central passage. "Why don't you kids go forward and enjoy the hop? I've got calls waiting." "Certainly, Daddy." "You'll excuse me, Thor? Business goes on. It's back to the mines for Uncle Jack." "Of course, Uncle Jack." Lida led him forward, and they sat down in a transparent bubble on the forward surface. The car rose straight up until they were several thousand feet high. It made a traffic circle sweep over the desert plain, then headed north toward the mountains. "Comfy?" asked Lida. "Quite, except that I'm dirty and must. There's a shower abaft the lounge, but we'll be home shortly, so why not enjoy the trip?" "All right." Thorby did not want to miss any of the fabulous views of Tara. It looked, he decided, like Hecate. No, more like Woolamura, except he had never seen so many buildings. The mountains. He looked again. "What's that white stuff? Alum?" Lida looked. "Why, that's snow. Those are the Sangre de Cristos." "Snow," Thorby repeated. "That's frozen water. You haven't seen snow before?" "I've heard of it. It's not what I expected." "It is frozen water, and yet it isn't exactly. It's more feathery." She reminded herself of Daddy's warning. She must not show surprise at anything. "You know," she offered, "I think I'll teach you to ski." Many miles and some minutes were used explaining what skiing was and why people did it. Thorby filed it away as something he might try, more likely not. Lida said that a broken leg was all that could happen. This is fun? Besides, she had mentioned how cold it could be. In Thorby's mind, cold was linked to hunger, beatings, and fear. "Maybe I could learn," he said dubiously, "but I doubt it." "Oh, sure you can." She changed the subject. "Forgive my curiosity, Thor, but there's a faint accent in your speech." "I didn't know I had an accent. I didn't mean to be rude." "You weren't. I suppose I picked it up in Jubalpur. That's where I lived longest." "Jubalpur, let me think. That's capital of the 9 worlds. Oh, yes, one of our colonies, isn't it?" Thorby wondered what the Sargon would think of that. Not exactly. It's a sovereign empire now. Their tradition is they were never anything else. They don't like to admit they derive from Terra." "What an odd point of view." A steward came forward with drinks and dainty nibbling foods. Thor accepted a frosted tumbler and sipped cautiously. Lida continued, "What were you doing there, Thor? Going to school?" Thorby thought of Pop's patient teaching, decided that was not what she meant. "I was begging." "What?" "I was a beggar." "Excuse me?" "A beggar, a licensed mendicant, a person who asks for alms." "That's what I thought you said," she answered. "I know what a beggar is. I've read books. But, excuse me, Thor, I'm just a home girl. I was startled." She was not a home girl. She was a sophisticated woman adjusted to her environment. Since her mother's death, she had been her father's hostess and could converse with people from other planets with aplomb, handled small talk of a large dinner party with gracious efficiency in 3 languages. Lida could ride, dance, sing, swim, ski, supervise a household, do arithmetic slowly, read and write if necessary, and make the proper responses. She was an intelligent, pretty, well-intentioned woman, culturally equivalent to a superior female headhunter. Able, adjusted, and skilled. But this strange, long lost and found cousin was a new bird to her. She said hesitantly, "Excuse my ignorance, but we don't have anything like that on Earth. I have trouble visualizing it. Was it terribly unpleasant?" Thorby's mind flew back. He was squatting in lotus seat in the great plaza with Pop sprawled beside him, talking. "It was the happiest time of my life," he said simply. "Oh," was all she could manage. But Daddy had left them so she could get to work. Asking a man about himself never failed. "How does one get started, Thor? I wouldn't know where to begin." "I was taught. You see, I was up for sale, and he thought of trying to explain Pop, decided to let it wait. An old beggar bought me. Bought you? I was a slave. And we'll let that sink in for Lita and continue next time.